And I just wanted to touch on the the Barry Weiss and CBS decision to pull the well-researched Seacock story, um, Salvador Gulag, as it's referred to accurately. Now we've all learned, and by the magic of insufficient corporate control, the story, of course, that they pulled ended up airing on a Canadian affiliate. So everybody in the universe, except perhaps people um, close to the prison itself, got to enjoy seeing the gory details of the place that the U.S. government chose to send not innocent men. Clearly, the report, which is a masterful job of journalism that 60 Minutes did, and that's the legacy of that program. I remember watching it when it first debuted with my father. I remember watching stories about Oliver North and in other uh, really eccentric characters that were covered expertly by that wonderful program. Ollie North, if you kids have time, it's worth a deep dive. It was Iran-Contra affair and Ronald Reagan, arms for hostages, and it was just made the '80s all the more delightful time to be alive. But here we have Stephen Miller and Donald J. Trump deciding to round up brown people that, in this case, a bunch of Venezuelan men that were not without fault of the couple hundred that were rounded up. There were amongst them 5 or 6% that were guilty or found guilty of some violent crime. But it's it's those guilty of crime in the White House is closer to 90%. So it's important to have a healthy, put it in a healthy context. So these men were all taken and shackled and brought to Seacon and tortured because and against the specific orders of a federal judge who told them to turn the planes around if they were in the air, and they were in fact in the air. So the U.S. government, the Trump administration, affirmatively defied a court order in order to bring these men to the El Salvador prison where they were tortured. And then eventually there was a deal that was struck with the Venezuelan government. Many of these men fled Venezuela for various reasons and feared prosecution upon their return. And some of them have suffered that. Some of them have gone elsewhere subsequently. But that's as I've stated before, Venezuela is a country with profound problems, a country that I have a tremendous love and affinity for. And certainly Nicolas Maduro is a bad guy. Is he such a horrible human being that we need to murder his citizens and pressure him by capturing what is essentially Chinese oil to put economic pressure? I'm going to say no, but that's, the elections have consequences. What they permit is they permit a president and his administration to put forth an agenda and execute that agenda if it is lawful. And by any reasonable measure, what the Trump administration is doing now is not lawful. So that means, and we can just put aside the $50 million a week in your U.S. taxpayer dollars that they're lighting on fire by keeping the Gerald R. Ford carrier battle group in the Caribbean when it could be doing other things like preparing to project U.S. power in the Pacific where it's needed. So it is a bad policy being executed by people that are not qualified to do it, even if it were a just policy. And there will be horrible repercussions, and more people will die. Hopefully, no more will be tortured in the Salvadoran prison. Hopefully, we're past that stage of the human cruelty part of the Trump 2.0 administration. That was they featured it and proudly, and they sending Kristi Noem to parade herself, her post Mar-a-Lago plastic surgery face and personage in front of a cell full of verifiable Salvadoran gang member bad guys. The men that were on the film. I'm older than you are. The men that were pictured in the cell while Kristi Noem was taking that gratuitous and grotesque photo op in the prison so many months ago now. They were MS-13 bad guys. They were verifiable gangbangers. They were tough guys. They perhaps had committed horrible crimes, but that's not our issue. They're we're going to assume because of the tremendous record of justice in El Salvador, Bukele and otherwise, that they got a fair trial. I doubt that very much. The programs that he introduced down there, because of the tremendous violence, was to round up lots of people and ask questions later. And he has said quite publicly that he is imprisoning people for the remainder of their lives, and some without the advantage of any due process. That's his country. This is ours. And when the president of the United States commits illegal acts in our name, we have a reason to object, and we should, and we will. This Barry Weiss, who is the head of CBS News now, after after her group was absorbed by the Ellison clan. Barry Weiss, who I don't know, is a woman about 10 years my junior, maybe she's around 50, who is a zealous advocate for Israel, which is her right. She is a person that her career has been as, if not a journalist, then a news person at least. But the decision to pull this story in order to fluff Donald J. Trump, because this would either cause him to develop a new terminal grievance, it would make him mad, it would make him threaten to sue CBS again. And of course, the Ellison family is at the top of the food chain at Paramount that owns CBS, and they've launched the hostile bid for Warner Brothers, which it's kind of a neat little a dirty symbiotic relationship where Donald Trump wants to take CNN and dismember it and torture it on the way down the road. He absolutely, that's his goal. The Ellisons can deliver CNN on a plate, and he can do that while they go on with the business of making movies or destroying the movie industry, and that remains to be seen. Whatever Barry Weiss does with CBS doesn't really matter. The legacy platform that she is running is of its value decreases just about every 15 seconds. And as we know from this past election cycle, the value of legacy media in general is almost non-existent. Everything is YouTube and Substack and similar platforms such as this, where people deliver news and opinion in a way that is more easily digestible and not as over processed as the traditional legacy news media. So whatever she controls there is ain't great today, and it's not going to get any better. She will have her say on various things, like she has the standing to pull a well-sourced and legally got the double thumbs up from the legal department at CBS. It was ready to go, and she pulled it because it would reflect poorly on the Trump administration in greater detail than this story has already done. And now most of the stories out there, there will be more accounts. I watched the episode a number of times and did some background reading on the gentlemen that were interviewed, and also read some from interviews done in Venezuela. And these men were sexually assaulted in this prison. They were not the only ones. They were beaten. They were tortured. And if you are of the mind, if you believe that that was justified in any way, then don't say any prayers at church with your family today and tomorrow at Christmas or Easter or ever, because if you do that and you support this administration's torture of fellow human beings, which is what you would be doing, then you don't deserve to have a conversation with God. I would argue that you are a reprehensible human being. Now, you're entitled to your opinion because up until January of this year, this was a free country, and you could have opinions on things like that, and you wouldn't have uh, J.D. Vance, hillbilly Yellergy, saying that anybody that says a bad word about my racist friend Charlie Kirk and his wife, who I'm going to get with, and the horrible things I say about my wife and children. If you're all down with that, if those are your people, and you're a MAGA cult member, go on with your bad self. Happy whatever. But just don't, do not ever put yourself forward as a God-fearing, pious, or religious person, because anybody that supports torture of another human being, and before that the it was known before these men were sent there that this prison, part of their standard operating procedure, was torture. It was then, It was during the time of these Venezuelan gentlemen that were there, and it is today. It's ongoing. It is what Bukele takes pride in that, and he believes that the example that he sets by torturing gang members will eradicate gang violence to some extent. Haven't seen the statistics. I'm not going to waste any energy on what a person that advocates torture believes, because that's like standing up for Hitler and Mussolini and saying, yeah, well, their environmental policy was pretty good. And I kind of, the economics were fine. It was just that whole Jewish thing they got wrong. No, you don't get to do that. You're a human being. You need to value the lives of others. And if someone is convicted of a crime, I would argue even in a heinous crime, and they are convicted by a jury of their peers with due process, like none of these gentlemen, and they are sentenced and they serve their time, there is no reason to wish torture upon any animal or human. That's just that's not what we do. That's not the lesson you want to set out there for your children. Um, so what is a more appropriate subject on Christmas Eve than torture and mayhem and JD Vance? Yeah. It's the world. We live where we do, where elections have consequences, and enough people chose to vote Donald Trump again, knowing everything they knew from Trump 1.0 and everything they knew from Project 2025 and everything he said. If there was a mystery, don't go to one of those dinner parties, mystery theaters with your wife or husband or uh, non-binary friend, foe, bedmate, or otherwise, because you're going to be a miserable failure. You will be a miserable failure at at mystery sleuth night at the local the local Elks Lodge. Won't work out well for you. They spelled it all out. They said what they were going to do. It turned out a little bit worse. Could you have anticipated that they would have physically tortured or been responsible for the torture of other human beings? You could say that you didn't think they would go that far, but now that you've seen it and that it is indisputable, indisputable that it has happened and is happening now and is more than likely to continue, you got to take a stand. If you're a human, even if you're an atheist. But if you ever go to church, temple, or a mosque, and you sit and genuinely engage with your pastor, your priest, your rabbi, your imam, and hold yourself out as a believer in a higher power, God, Jehovah, Abraham, or otherwise, or Buddha. We all love Buddha. Any of those beings, it's a good time at the holidays to check yourself, because what is happening, there's no God does not live in any of the people that commit these acts. I'm not a theologian. As I've said before, I'm f- f- a, for- a former Episcopal who converted to Catholicism, and but not a deep, uh, soulful practitioner. But more and more as I get older, and certainly reading more scripture and more of the Bible since Donald Trump took office, because I need to understand some behaviors that are not logical. How Republicans in the Senate and House can get up and spout racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic hate speech, and then turn around and close with "God bless America." You don't get to do that. I mean, you can, but you will be lighting yourself up as a serious hypocrite. I mean, you're a member of Congress, so you're already you're halfway down the road. You know, I mean, come on. But what if you were a man or a woman? Let's just assume you didn't want your children and grandchildren to hate you for cause. You know, mom, dad, Grammy, grandpa. Why would they send these people to this place when they knew they would be tortured? Well, little Billy Bob, you see, they came over the border in Arizona to earn enough money to feed their family. I'm not trying to stigmatize a Mexican man or woman, but I'm just as an example. These people came across the Canadian border in order to provide for their family, in order to earn enough to feed and clothe their children and put a roof over their heads. They don't need to be, they didn't plan on being billionaires. They didn't aspire to be Elon Musk. They didn't aspire to sell access to the White House in order to enrich themselves to the tune of nearly $4 billion, dealing with, uh, pardon, cryptocurrency platform owners that finance terrorism. That's a very specific aspiration. I would argue that the vast majority of people that came across the border illegally did so to feed their family. And I don't have the words. I've got so many words, obviously, because I throw them around like they're popcorn. But the teachings, what this probably is universal to the Quran, right? The Talmud and the Bible is what you do for the least among us, you do for me. So, and that was, when Jesus said, when you take care of the refugee, when you take care of the sick and the hungry, You are doing for them, but you're doing it for me as well because you are behaving in a, if you'll excuse the term, in a godly manner. You are giving of yourself to help or save the life of another human being. What would be more appropriate at the holidays, Christmas, or rewind 3 months to uh, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and any other holiday where we show our obedience or connection with a higher power. But think about that as you're looking at that. You pick up that story on YouTube on CCOT, and that your government in the United States, in your name, through the good offices, he said ironically, of Donald J. Trump, Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, yeah, uh, Mr. Roads to Havana lead through Caracas, etc. Just try to rationalize. You don't have to. You would have to rationalize it only if you didn't see the absurdity and the evil in what's going on. You rationalize it. Well, we. I have a kill or be killed policy on immigrants that cross the border. If you do, get thee to a nunnery or something. You need help. You need help being a better human. But just think about that one point, and I'll leave you to enjoy the evening with your family. But that that reminder somewhere in the Talmud or the Quran or the Bible is if you affirmatively, if you make a decision to help a desperate refugee, a a man or woman that is hungry or that is sick, hash, I don't want breaking news here, but uh, uh, Jesus and Mary were Jesus, Mary, and Joseph um, were uh, were immigrants too. So, if you take that step, hold your hand out in fellowship, friendship, and feed the hungry, and shelter those that are vulnerable, protect those that are vulnerable, then it's the right thing to do. It'll feel fantastic, selfishly. And if you connect with a higher being, it'll please them too. And for a New Year's resolution, anything, I, if you ever cared about what would please, I guess, any occupant of the White House, but certainly Donald J. Trump, give that up for your New Year's resolution for Lent and for any other reason you can think of, because they're not worthy they have proven themselves to be wholly unworthy of such charitable behavior. So, in any case, happy Christmas, and wishing you and your family health and good cheer and all of those sorts of things. And we will connect with you in the very near future. Thanks very much.